Wolverine is often remembered for one thing. His body heals. Bullets disappear beneath closing skin. Bones realign. Cuts vanish in seconds. To the outside world, that looks like invincibility. But healing is not the same as recovery. Because while his body resets, something else keeps accumulating. Time, memory, experience. Logan doesn't regenerate from what he has seen. He carries it forward. Philosophers have long warned that endurance is not the same as strength. Nietzsche once wrote that what doesn't kill us doesn't automatically make us stronger. Sometimes it simply teaches us how to survive. Wolverine embodies that distinction. Every wound closes, every scar fades, but every moment remains. Decades of violence, centuries of loss, a life stretched far beyond anything the human mind evolved to hold. His power creates an illusion. From the outside, he looks unbreakable. From the inside, he is something else entirely. Because trauma doesn't live in tissue. It lives in memory. It lives in patterns, in reflexes, in the way silence feels heavier than noise. Logan can walk away from explosions. He can survive wars. He can outlive everyone he loves. But he cannot regenerate distance from his past. Some thinkers believe that the body is remarkably adaptable, while the psyche keeps score. The muscles forget. The nerves recover. The mind remembers. And that is where Wolverine truly lives. Not in the fights, not in the claws, but in the quiet moments afterward. When the adrenaline fades, when the room goes still, when there's nothing left to do but sit with everything that didn't disappear, this is the paradox at the center of his character. A man who heals endlessly, yet never truly recovers. And that raises a deeper question. What does it mean to survive when healing never actually arrives? There's something deeply unnatural about living too long, not because of aging, but because of accumulation. Human beings are built for cycles, for beginnings and endings, for forgetting as much as remembering. Wolverine doesn't get that mercy. Every decade adds another layer. Every war leaves residue. Every relationship becomes another ghost. His body resets after every injury. His mind never does. Carl Jung once suggested that unresolved experiences don't disappear. They reorganize themselves inside us. They surface in habits, in reactions, in the way we pull away before someone gets too close. Logan is a walking archive of unfinished moments, not just battles, goodbyes, promises that couldn't be kept, names that slowly lose their faces. Immortality is often framed as a gift, but Wolverine shows its quieter cost. When everyone around you is temporary, attachment becomes dangerous. Love turns fragile. Connection feels like borrowing time, so he learns distance. He learns to leave first. He learns not to ask questions that don't have answers. He learns to treat people like passing seasons, not because he doesn't care, but because caring always ends the same way. Albert Camus once wrote about the absurdity of continuing in a world that offers no resolution. Not triumph, not closure, just repetition. That idea lives inside Logan. Wake up, survive, move on. Again, his healing factor keeps him alive, but it also traps him in a permanent present where the past never fully settles and the future feels like more of the same. This is the real burden of regeneration, not the pain of injury, the weight of continuity, a life where nothing ends cleanly. Only the body gets a reset. The rest simply accumulates. Physical wounds have edges. They begin somewhere. They end somewhere. Memory doesn't work that way. It spreads. It leaks into unrelated moments. It reshapes perception. It changes how the world feels long after the original damage is gone. Wolverine doesn't just remember trauma. He lives inside it. Every sound carries echoes. Every quiet room holds old conversations. Every unfamiliar face invites comparison with someone already lost. Some philosophers believe that time heals. Others were more honest. They understood that time doesn't erase. It reorganizes. Nietzsche described memory as something heavy, a weight we carry forward, not something we leave behind. And Logan carries centuries, not as stories, as atmosphere. His past isn't something he revisits. It's something he breathes. Psychology tells us that trauma is not stored like a file. It's stored in the body, in posture, in vigilance, in the way the nervous system stays alert even when there's no immediate threat. Logan embodies that. His claws come out faster than his words. His instincts activate before reflection. Not because he wants violence, but because his system learned that danger arrives without warning. Jung spoke about the shadow, the parts of ourselves shaped by experiences we never fully integrate. For Wolverine, that shadow isn't symbolic. It's practical. It knows how to fight. It knows how to disappear. It knows how to survive at any cost. But survival leaves residues. Moments that never quite close. Relationships that end without resolution. A sense that peace is always temporary. His regeneration heals flesh. But memory remains untreated. And so Logan becomes something painfully human. A man whose body forgets while his mind remembers everything. Violence, at first, feels exceptional. It arrives as interruption, as crisis, as something that breaks the normal flow of life. But over time, repetition changes its shape. For Wolverine, violence doesn't announce itself anymore. It's routine. War after war. Mission after mission. A long sequence of conflict separated only by brief pauses. What begins as survival slowly becomes structure. There's a quiet danger in that. When chaos becomes familiar, calm starts to feel foreign. Logan doesn't seek battle, but battle keeps finding him. And eventually, the nervous system adapts. The body stays ready. The senses remain sharpened. Rest becomes shallow. Philosophers who studied human endurance noticed this pattern. They observed that prolonged exposure to threat doesn't just create fear, it reshapes identity. You don't merely experience danger. You become organized around it. Wolverine lives in that state. He's most at ease in motion, most comfortable when there's a clear objective, most grounded when everything is burning. Stillness, on the other hand, feels unstable. Quiet leaves room for memory, and memory brings weight, so he keeps moving. Marcus Aurelius once wrote about meeting hardship with discipline rather than resentment, about accepting what comes without complaint. Logan reflects that stoicism on the surface. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't explain himself. He just shows up and does what needs to be done. But stoicism can become camouflage. It can hide exhaustion. It can hide grief. It can turn pain into background noise. Over decades, that takes a toll. Violence stops being something that happens to him. It becomes something he carries, not as rage, as familiarity. And familiarity is dangerous, because when suffering becomes ordinary, you stop noticing how much of yourself it consumes. Wolverine doesn't glorify conflict. He endures it, again and again and again. Living this long comes with a strange side effect. You stop being just one person. You become a collection of versions. The soldier, the experiment, the loner, the mentor, the weapon. Wolverine isn't defined by a single identity. He's layered. Each era leaves behind a different Logan. Some are buried. Some remain active. Some surface only under pressure. Psychologists describe identity as something shaped by continuity, a story we tell ourselves about who we are. But Logan's story keeps getting interrupted. Memories are lost. Names change. Places disappear. There's no clean narrative thread, just fragments. Jung believed that when parts of the self are never fully integrated, they don't vanish. They wait. They emerge in moments of stress, anger, or vulnerability. That explains why Wolverine can feel calm one moment and feral the next. Those shifts aren't mood swings. They're unresolved selves stepping forward. Immortality doesn't give him clarity. It multiplies him. Every trauma creates another layer. Every loss adds another silence. Over time, coherence becomes harder to maintain. So he simplifies. He reduces himself to function. Fight, protect, leave. It's easier than trying to reconcile decades of contradiction. There's also something quietly tragic about this. Because without a stable identity, belonging becomes temporary. He drifts between teams, between families, between eras, always present, never fully anchored. Some philosophers suggested that meaning comes from narrative, from seeing your life as a coherent arc. Wolverine doesn't get that luxury. His arc keeps restarting, so he lives in chapters instead. Short connections, Brief alliances, moments of purpose that fade as soon as the danger passes. His body remains the same, but the person inside keeps changing. And none of those versions ever fully disappear. They just wait their turn. There's a quiet difference between surviving and recovering. Survival is about getting through. Recovery is about coming back. Wolverine rarely gets the second. His life is a continuous sequence of emergencies. One crisis blends into the next. One mission replaces the previous one. There's never enough distance for true repair. Camus once wrote about the strange courage required to wake up every day and continue, even when nothing feels resolved. Not hope, not victory, just persistence. That idea lives inside Logan. He doesn't believe in clean endings. He believes in endurance. His healing factor ensures that he's always physically ready for whatever comes next. But psychologically, he's stuck in maintenance mode. Always functional, never restored. Modern trauma theory talks about this state, a kind of suspended survival, where the body is present, but the nervous system never fully stands down. Rest becomes shallow. Joy feels conditional. Safety feels temporary. Logan operates from that place. He doesn't imagine a future without conflict. He plans for the next impact. So, he keeps his bags light, his attachments loose, his expectations low. Not because he's pessimistic, because experience taught him that stability doesn't last. Stoic philosophers spoke about accepting reality as it is rather than how we wish it to be. Wolverine embodies that acceptance. He doesn't complain, he adapts. But adaptation has a cost. When survival becomes the default state, you stop asking what you're surviving for. You move forward out of habit, out of momentum, out of responsibility. Not because healing arrived, just because stopping feels impossible. And that's the most subtle tragedy of his regeneration. It keeps him moving, but it never gives him back what he lost. Time treats Wolverine differently. For most people, years bring distance. Memories soften, edges blur. Loss slowly becomes something you can carry. Logan doesn't get that easing. His life stretches so far that grief never finishes settling. Every generation leaves him behind. Friends age, students grow old, lovers disappear into history. He remains. Philosophers have often warned that longevity without closure creates a unique kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of isolation, the loneliness of outlasting. Logan isn't alone because no one is around. He's alone because everyone eventually leaves. And over time, that changes how you relate to people. You stop investing fully. You start protecting yourself in advance. Martin Heidegger wrote that human meaning comes from knowing our time is limited. That finitude gives weight to our choices. Wolverine exists outside that structure. His days don't feel scarce. They feel repetitive. Without an ending in sight, urgency dissolves. Purpose becomes harder to sustain. So Logan grounds himself in immediate usefulness. He helps who's in front of him. He handles the problem that exists right now. He doesn't think too far ahead, because thinking too far ahead only leads to more absence. There's also something cruel about regeneration across decades. He remembers faces long after photographs fade. He carries voices that no longer exist. His mind becomes a museum of people who never got to stay. This is the cost of time when you can't leave it behind. Not boredom, not fatigue, accumulated mourning, a slow layering of goodbyes. His body remains young, but his inner world grows heavier with every passing era. And eventually, even survival starts to feel less like resilience and more like obligation. Wolverine doesn't get a moment of arrival. There's no final scene where everything makes sense. No chapter where the past finally loosens its grip. He simply continues. That's the quiet truth at the center of his story. His body heals. His mind adapts, but nothing truly resets. Philosophers have long argued about whether time redeems suffering. Some believe that meaning emerges through endurance. Others suspected that endurance only teaches us how to carry what never left. Logan seems to live somewhere between those ideas. He doesn't expect redemption. He doesn't wait for closure. He just stays present. He protects when needed. He leaves when it's time. He survives because survival is what remains. There's something deeply human in that. Not heroic, not triumphant. Human, because most trauma doesn't resolve itself in dramatic breakthroughs. It fades into routine. It becomes background. It reshapes who we are without ever asking permission. Wolverine shows us that regeneration doesn't equal restoration. That strength doesn't guarantee peace. That living a long time doesn't mean healing arrives. Sometimes it just means learning how to keep going. Camus once wrote that the struggle itself can be enough to fill a person's heart, not because it fixes anything, but because it gives shape to existence. Logan embodies that struggle. He doesn't conquer his past. He carries it. He doesn't overcome loss. He moves alongside it. And maybe that's the most honest version of survival. Not the fantasy of becoming whole again, but the quieter courage of continuing even when the wounds that matter most never fully close.